Is Donald Trump a fascist? Depending on who you ask, the answer is either obviously yes, absolutely not, or some 30-minute Facebook comment written entirely in capital letters that nobody truly cares about. The word fascist gets thrown around constantly today. Politicians are called fascists, journalists are called fascist. Your uncle who makes weird jokes about the neighbor's daughter and talks about how the world's out to get him and there's enough booze and cigs in the world to keep him in line. He's going about a certain group of people controlling the weather. Anyway, but here's the problem. Most people using the word couldn't actually explain what fascism is. So before we could talk about whether modern politicians are fascists, we first need to answer a more important question. What was fascism? Where did it come from? Who created it? And what happened when fascists actually gained power? To answer that question, we need to travel back to Italia. And trust me, things are about to get weird. World War I ended in 1918. Italy was on the winning side, which sounds great, unlike the World Cup team for the past couple of years. But like today, many Italians didn't feel like winners. Nationalists argued that Italy had sacrificed hundreds of thousands of lives during the war and had been promised territory by its allies. But when the peace treaties were finalized, Italy received some of what it expected, but not everything. And this led to a phase that became famous throughout Italy, La Vittoria Mutilata, the mutilated victory. And the idea was simple. We won the war, so why does it feel like we got ripped off? Like imagine spending 4 years trying to build up a relationship and you put your blood, sweat, and tears into all of it. You're working 12-hour days to save up for a condo and she decides just to end it all and leaves you with the car. Anyway, you, Erica. But that's roughly how many Italian nationalists felt. At the same time, Italy was facing serious problems at home. Inflation was rising, workers were striking, factories were being occupied, farmers were seizing land, the economy was struggling. And many Italians feared that a communist revolution similar to the one in Russia might spread into Italy. Meanwhile, the government seemed unable to solve anything. The country felt chaotic. People were angry. And angry people often become interested in leaders who promise simple solutions to complicated problems. Now enter Benito Mussolini. Mussolini wasn't born a fascist. In fact, he originally belonged to a socialist movement. But after World War I, he began developing a new political ideology, one that rejected liberal democracy, rejected communism, and promised national renewal. Just like how you promised we'd be together for life, Erica, you. In 1919, he founded the fascist movement. The word fascism comes from the ancient Roman symbol known as the feces, the faces, the fasces. You know what I mean. A bundle of wooden rods tied together around an axe, and the message was simple. One stick breaks easily, many sticks together are strong. Mussolini loved Roman imagery. He wanted Italians to stop thinking about modern Italy and start imagining themselves as the descendants of a mighty empire. And that wasn't an accident. A lot of fascist messaging was built around pride, strength, unity, and national greatness. Mussolini wasn't selling policies, he was selling a vision. Defining fascism can be difficult because different fascist movements had different ideas. Like Erica, you psychopath, bitch, mother, son of a. Okay, sorry, I'm done. But most shared several common beliefs. First, extreme nationalism. The nation came before the individual. Your personal interest mattered less than what was supposedly best for the country. Second, a strong leader. Fascists believed democracy was weak, divided, and inefficient. They argued that a strong leader could cut through political arguments and make things happen. Third, anti communism. Many fascist supporters feared socialist and communist revolutions. Fourth, glorification of strength. Military values, discipline, sacrifice, and national unity were heavily emphasized. And finally, the belief that the nation had declined and needed to be restored to greatness. You'll probably notice some important things here. Not every nationalist movement is fascist, not every strong leader is a fascist, and not every patriotic citizen is a fascist. Fascism is usually identified by a combination of these ideas rather than one single belief. Now we get to one of the darker parts of the story. Like literally, because Mussolini's followers became known as the Blackshirts. Officially, they were political activists. Unofficially, they spent a lot of time beating the absolute out of their opponents. Socialists were attacked, trade unions were targeted, political meetings were disrupted, newspapers were vandalized, violence became a political tool. And here's something important. Many wealthy landowners and business leaders didn't necessarily love fascism, but they feared communism even more. As a result, some of them supported Mussolini, not because they thought he was perfect, but because they believed he was the lesser threat. History is full of examples of people supporting dangerous movements because they're afraid of the alternative. In October 1922, Mussolini made his move. Thousands of fascist supporters entered the capital, which was known as the March on Rome. The name makes it sound like a giant Hollywood battle scene, but in reality, it was much messier than that. But politically, it was incredibly effective. The fascists projected strength, the government appeared weak. King Victor Emmanuel III now faced a choice: use force against the fascists, or invite Mussolini into the government. He chose the second option. Mussolini became prime minister. And here's the key lesson: he didn't take power through a military conquest, he gained power legally. Many dictators don't arrive by kicking down the front door. Sometimes they're invited inside, like that one friend that says he just needs a place to sleep for a couple days, and after 3 months, you're just ready to slime this mother. Once in office, Mussolini didn't immediately abolish democracy. Instead, he gradually consolidated power. Opposition parties faced restrictions, critics were intimidated, journalists faced censorship, political freedom shrank year after year, step by step. By the mid 1920s, Italy had effectively become a dictatorship. Mussolini became known as Il Duce, the leader. His image appeared everywhere: schools, posters, newspapers, radio broadcasts. If social media had existed back then, Mussolini probably would have been posting thirst traps on TikTok. A cult of personality developed around him. The message was simple: Mussolini was Italy, and Italy was Mussolini. One common misconception is that dictatorships are always dramatic every single day, but the reality is usually more complicated because many Italians still worked jobs, raised families, went to school, and watched sports. They lived relatively normal lives, but beneath that normality, freedoms were disappearing. The government increasingly controlled information. Political opposition vanished. Independent organizations were brought under state influence, and children joined youth organizations that promoted fascist ideals. The schools emphasized loyalty to the nation and the leader. Propaganda became a part of everyday life, and the goal wasn't simply to govern Italy, the goal was to reshape Italian society. Mussolini admired the Roman Empire a lot, possibly an unhealthy amount. He dreamed of rebuilding Italy into a great imperial power. And in 1935, Italy invaded Ethiopia. The invasion was condemned internationally, but for Mussolini, it was proof that Italy was becoming strong again. Or at least that was the image he wanted people to believe. Expansion and military glory became major parts of fascist identity, and the idea was that great nations expanded, weak nations didn't. It was a worldview built around power and prestige. As the 1930s continued, Mussolini formed closer ties with Signor Schmittler. You know, the guy that just loved talking about the Jews. Many people assumed Schmittler created fascism, but in reality, Mussolini's movement came first. Schmittler actually admired several aspects of Italian fascism. Although Fascist Italy and Nazi Germany were not identical, they shared many similarities. Over time, the two countries became allies. This alliance would eventually drag Italy into the Second World War, and that decision would prove disastrous. By the early 1940s, things were going badly. Italian military campaigns struggled, the economy suffered, public confidence had collapsed, and Mussolini's image as the unstoppable leader began to crack. In 1943, he was removed from power. By 1945, he was dead. The regime that once promised national greatness had ended in defeat and destruction. The Roman Empire had not returned, and Italy was left to rebuild. So, what was fascism? It wasn't just a political insult. It wasn't simply another word for authoritarianism. It was a specific ideology born from a period of national frustration, economic instability, fear of political extremism, and dissatisfaction with democracy. It emphasized nationalism, centralized authority, a powerful leader, suppression of the opposition, and the belief that the nation could be restored through unity, strength, and discipline. Understanding fascism doesn't tell us whether every modern politician is a fascist, but it does give us the tools to recognize what fascism actually looked like when it existed. And that's important because history doesn't repeat itself exactly, but it often leaves clues. And as for the question we started with, is Donald Trump a fascist? That's a debate you'll have to decide for yourself. If you enjoyed the video, subscribe and let me know what historical topic you'd like me to tackle next.